of this shift dress, these are all the materials we're going to be needing. The crepe fabric of about 2.5 yards, chalk, scissors, tape rule, meter rule, and the measurement you are seeing on the screen right now. I'm going to be dividing the fabric into two different spaces, and to divide this I'm going to be using my hip measurement, which is the biggest part of my body, and then also the length of the dress with allowances for stitch allowance and some ease. So that is what you're going to use to cut out the fabric, or the quantity of fabric you need for the measurement. So this is what I have right now, and I'm just going to add allowances and cut it out exactly what I've said. So this is what I have, and I'm going to be making a straight line at the edge of the fabric to serve as our shoulder line. On the shoulder line, take your shoulder measurement divided by 2. Whatever you have after making that division is what you are placing right where I'm chalking. Your shoulder measurement divided by 2 is what you'll be chalking on the shoulder line. So from there, the next thing we're going to be doing is to measure the neckline. So to determine the width of the neckline, I'm going in by 3 and I'm going down by 1.5 for the breadth of the for the depth of the neck. So you just use your curve rule to make a curve around where you've chalked. If it is difficult for you to use the curve rule, or if your fabric is not settling in for the curve, you can just use your free hand to curve around what you've done to just get the curve around the neckline. So around where you chalked earlier, you go down by 1 inch to make the shoulder slope. If you've been with us for a while now, you would understand that in our tutorial we always make slope around the shoulder. It is not compulsory because some people like it to be straight, but for me I like the slope around the shoulder because the shoulder is not straight or flat, it has curve. So that is what we're just trying to drop on the sketch we're making on the fabric. So now we're going to be taking other measurements, other body measurements. From the shoulder line, I'm going to be chalking the bust points. Then after that, I'm going to other bust. Then from the under bust, I'm going to have the waistline. From the waistline, I'm going to be having the hip line. That is what I'm just taking, the hip line, and then finally the length of the dress. That is just what I'm chalking. I'm going to be duplicating this same measurements on this other side of the fabric. So to repeat what I've said, the bust point, which is 10 inches, the under bust, which for me, which is about 14 inches, the waist, the hip, and then the length of the dress is what I am taking measurements of. Then I'm going to be connecting this point that I've made using a meter rule so it can be straight as you are seeing it. You connect it from the very beginning of the fabric to the end of the fabric. So right now, the next thing we're going to be doing, to determine the armhole, take your bust measurement divided by 4, add 1.5, and then you chalk it around where you are seeing me doing that. And that is going to be our chest line. So with your meter rule, make a straight line from the sides of the fabric. Just make a straight line like the ones you've made earlier on. That is going to be our chest line. So that is just what I'm doing right now. I'm going to be taking what I have on my shoulder line right now, and I'm going to be placing on the new line we've made, which is my chest line, and I'm just going to be chalking it. That is what you are seeing me doing right now. Then from there, you're going to connect the 2 points using your meter rule. You connect the 2 points from the shoulder line to the chest line. Then I'll just label the line so I know what I'm doing, and I'll not be confused. Next thing to do is to get our armhole curve. You're going to be dividing your bust measurements by 4, and then you're going to be adding 1 inch allowance for ease. Your bust measurement divided by 4, and then 1 inch allowance for ease, because we're going to be having 2 different armhole since we are cutting the front and the back together. So to determine the midpoint for the armhole, you place your meter rule and then you determine the midpoint and use your curve rule to make a curve towards that's from the midpoint towards the 1 inch that you added around the armhole area. For the front armhole, you are going to be going in by 1 inch around that midpoint. You go in by 1 inch and then you use this is for the back. What I'm labeling is for the back. Then you use your curve rule also, and then you connect it to the very point you've made right now, which is the 1 inch you went in by. You use your curve rule and connect it because we are having two different armhole for this dress. That's for the front and for the back. This present one I'm doing right now is for the front. The first one we did earlier, which is in front of this one, is for the back. So you can watch the video again. You can watch so you would understand what we are doing, how I got the armhole measurements for the front one and the one at the back. I'm just trying to connect it properly because I saw that it was not deep enough. So that's just what I'm doing, trying to just connect it properly. So now I'm going to be adding stitch allowance, which is about 1.5 inches for the stitch allowance. That is what I'm adding. The first one I added earlier, the 1 inch, was for ease, not a stitch allowance. This is the stitch allowance I'm adding right now currently. So I'm going to be taking the full measurement of what we have right now on the chest line, and I'm going to be duplicating it on the bust line. So that is what I'm doing currently. I measured the full measurements we have on the chest line and I duplicated it on the bust line. So now we're going to be moving down to the hip, to the waistline. Anything you have around your waist, after measuring your waist, you divide it by 4. You place it on your waistline, you chalk it, then you add 1 inch for ease and then 1.5 inch for sewing allowance. You are seeing me labeling it one after the other so you would understand it. On that line we have 3 different measurements. The first one is the waist divided by 4, 1 inch for ease, and then the last one, the 1.5 inch for sewing allowance. So on the hip right now, I'm going to be doing the same thing. The hip measurement divided by 4, 1 inch for ease, and then 1.5 inch for stitch allowance. Then whatever I have on the hip line right now is what I'm going to be duplicating on the hemline, because it's not as if we're making it tighter, it's just a free shift gown. So that is just what I'm doing. Whatever I have on the hip line is what I'm going to be duplicating on the hemline. I'm just trying to make a straight line on the hemline, so I would have an angle to duplicate what we have on the hip line. So after all of this is done, the next thing is to use your curve rule to connect all the points from the chest line down to the waistline, then from the hip line, from the waistline, pardon me, from the chest line down to the hip line, then from the hip line down to the hemline. So that is what I am doing. I'm even struggling between using a pencil and this yellow chalk because I need something that can be visible enough for you guys to see. So that is why you see me shuffling between the pencil and the chalk. I initially thought the chalk was not really visible. The next thing to do is to take the depth of the front neckline, which is I'm going in by 3 inches. So the 3 inches is what I just marked, and I'm going to also use my curve rule to curve around that line I just did right now. So the first one we did, the initial one we did, is for the back. This one I'm doing currently is for the front. So the front and the back has two different neckline. one is deeper than the other. That is just the difference. So that is just what I'm taking. The first one was by 1 inch, 1.5 inch. This is by 3. I went down by 3. That's for the front, and that other one is for the back. Just the way we have the armhole, which is for the back and the front. So that is just where the differences are. I'm going to be cutting it out right now, and I'm cutting out the first one, which is for the back. Then after that, we would cut for the front. This is what we have after cutting the fabric from the neckline, the armhole, and down to the hemline. So I'm going to be taking out one of the cut. I'm going to be taking out the one behind it, and I'm going to be dropping it. That's for the back. So we're going to continue our cutting. So for the front we have a new neckline and also a new armhole. That is just what is different for the back, and that is what I'm going to be cutting. I'm going to be cutting for the new neckline now. I'm taking out this one, and then for the armhole I'm taking out this current armhole. That is why we had to do the two measurements of the front and the back. And then in the thumbnail you see that the picture has an opening, like a slit on the chest. So that is just what I'm going to be adding to it. I made a measurement of 4 inches, and I'm going to be using my scissors to make the opening around that neckline. That's just 4 inches. You can make it longer, you can make it shorter. It depends, your preference, your choice. So that is what we have, and we are done cutting the dress. The next thing we are doing is to cut out the sleeve, and I'm going to be using the slash and spread method. I'm using this pattern paper. I'm making a straight line, which is our shoulder line, by the edge of the paper, and then I'm going to be taking measurement of about 4.5 inches is what I'm going down by, which is our bicep line. And then also I took the elbow measurements, which is below the bicep line. I'm supposed to take the full inches of the sleeve, but the pattern paper is not going to be enough, so I'm just going to ignore that for now, then we'll continue later on. So I'm going to be going in by 4 inches. I've already done that. I also went down by about 4.5 inches, and then to get the midpoint is what you see me doing. I already marked the midpoint of the pattern paper, and then for this I went in by 6 inches, which is my bicep divided by 2, and then I also added 1.5 inch for stitch allowance and then ease. Then I'm going to be connecting the points I marked on the shoulder line using my curve. You can watch the way I'm using the curve to make this line. First off, you curve it towards the midpoint that you created earlier, and then you turn your curve rule and then connect it to from that midpoint to the point of the allowance. You can look at this again so you would understand. I don't know how I'm going to explain the changing of the curve rule. So for the length, this is actually short for it, but we're going to get there. I also took measurement of my elbow divided by 2, and then I added 1.5 inches for allowance. I'm going to be connecting that point from the bicep point to the elbow line, then so the bicep line to the elbow line. That's what I'm doing right now. I am going to be adding an extra sheet of paper because I needed the length to be full so I can know what I'm cutting, since I'm doing the slash and spread method. So I had to have the full length of the sleeve, so I had to add an extra. So I'm taking my full length. That is what I'm marking right now, and then I'm going to be taking measurement of my wrist. I'll take measurement of my wrist divided by 2 also, and then I'll also add 1.5 inches for stitch allowance. So that is what I am just going to do. Then I would connect from the elbow point to the wrist point. That is just all. After that, we would continue from there. So that is also what I'm going to be doing right now. cutting out what we have marked so far. So from there is what we're going to continue our method for the sleeve. So now around the wrist, I'm going to be taking measurement of about 1.5 inch in between this wrist line. We're supposed to have 1.5 inch in 3 places, and I'm going to be using my scissors to slash them. So this is what we have, and I'm going to be placing it on this piece of fabric that I had already cut into 2 different pieces. I did the measurements using about 27 or 27.5 inches for the length, and then about I think 17 or 18 inches for the breadth. Then in between the slash of the sleeve, I also allowed some spaces about 4 inches in between the sleeve. Then I would pin it down for easy cutting so it does not move, since there is a constant measurement we have made 4 inches in between. So I'm just going to be cutting out what we have right now. I don't know if you guys are understanding the explanation of this sleeve, but if you are not, you can request for me to just do a sleeve tutorial and I'll post it here on the channel. So right now I'm already done cutting the sleeve. I'm going to be, for the neckline of the back and the front, I'm going to be using a facing for this. So you just use a piece of fabric and then you trace out the neckline, the shoulder, the armhole. So that is on, it depends on how wide you want it to be though. So that's just what I'm doing, and I'm going to be doing this for the back and the front. And also this particular one is for the back. I'm going to be doing for the front, and I'm going to show you how it's being done also for the front, since we have an opening for around the chest. So for the front, you're going to go down by 1 inch away from the slit we did earlier. So this is what we have, and I'm showing you where you're going to be stitching around the neck. You're going to be stitching around where my chalk line is going through around the neck. Let me get back. So this is what I have after stitching it on the machine, and I've also done the stitch for the back. So right now I'm going to be showing you what we're going to be doing next. We're going to be connecting or joining the shoulder together, and to join the shoulder together you're going to be facing the two fabric right sides facing each other. So you're going to be using this facing we had added to the back, turn it together with the front shoulder. So you see we have about 4 layers of fabric. So see what I'm doing, you use the facing, and so this is what we have after everything. It's just to give it a neat um stitch around the shoulder, so you don't have to like put everything together and just stitch it straight down. No, you just put it together like this and all the edges will be inside. So that is what I have done. Now I'm going to be stitching down the sides of the fabric. So you see I'm going to be stitching down the sides of the dress. So I'm done stitching down the sides, the shoulder. What is left for us to stitch now? I'm also going to be folding the hemline. So let me just go, I'll be back. So this is the sleeve. I've connected the area I'm supposed to connect around the sleeve. So this is what we have. I'm going to be joining it to the dress, and we have come to the end of the dress. So you just connect the sleeve to the dress and we are done, because I'd already made the fold around the hemline. I'm just going to make some fold around the sleeve because we're not going to be adding feathers. We're just going to leave it this way. Thank you for watching.